Hello everyone, Shalom. Welcome to our second shiur of our series Torah Chaim, where we go over Piskei Din from the Beth Din in Israel. And in this shiur, we're going to go over a very interesting Psak Din, which is relevant to the 2 years that we have been through now in Eretz Israel, the war. And it's a Psak Din about rental. So, without further ado, let's get into the Pratim. So, our case is a case which is taking place in the city of Ma'alot. For those of you that don't know, the city of Ma'alot, maybe I'll put a map here, is in northern Israel, towards Lebanon, towards the west, but it's not that close to the border. It's close to the border, but not very, very close. Basically, what happened is that the following. A single woman, rented a flat from someone. So there's Ploini, she's rented a flat from Almoini. This flat, the rental agreement was for a year, and the flat has two rooms. She's paying 3,000 shekels rent per month. There's furniture in the flat which she can use, and that is part of the agreement. And she gave the owner, the Balabait, a check for 9,000 shekels, which is 3 months rent forward, and of course all the municipal taxes she has to pay: arnona, water, electricity, Balabait, etc. What is the issue? There is no mamad, no safe room in the flat. Okay, she knew this, she understood this, and she agreed to take the flat. It is important to note that this same owner has another flat next to each other, so there's 1 and 2. She's renting the one, there's no safe room, no mamad in that room, but in the other one, which is just next to, there is a mamad. Okay, so we all know this. They started this agreement in the summer of 2023. We all know what happened on October, on Sukkot, on Simchat Torah. The war started, and on the 7th of October, the war started. On the 8th of October, started sirens and shooting up north. This is about a month and a few days after the beginning of the rental agreement, and also the city of Ma'alot was in the range of Hezbollah's rockets. What happened is that, seeming there is, as we said, no mamad in the flat, and there's also no miklat. There's some places like in Yerushalayim, some places there's a miklat tziburi. There's a public like it's a miklat in the street. Ma'alot doesn't have that kind of thing. They have mamadim in the houses. So there's no miklat for her to go to. There's no mamad for her to go to. The other flat, the family that's living there said, "Come on, whenever there's a siren, you can come into our flat." Even though it must be noted that she wasn't given a key for the flat, meaning if there's a siren and the other people in the other flat are not there, then she can't get in. Okay, but these are the details. So. A short while after the war started, she decided that she is leaving the flat. She informed the Balabait, and she said, "Listen, every time there's a siren, I get all tense. I have to hide under my bed. I have nowhere to go. I'm leaving." She did try for a while to bring in other people to rent the flat, but there were 2 problems. The first one was that most of the people that wanted to come and rent the flat were people that were evacuated from Yeshuvim further north from Ma'alot. Ma'alot wasn't evacuated by Medinat Israel, by the state. And the people that wanted to come and rent the flat were people that were coming, the Ma'alot was south for them. The Balabait didn't want to. He wanted someone to rent the flat for long term, at least until the summer, which then we didn't know how long it's going to take, right? But at least until the summer, which is the end of the contract with this woman. So he didn't want most of those. That was one reason. Then one of the few people that she managed to bring to come and see the flat. The thing was that the Balabait was already in Miluim. He was in Miluim down in the south, and he was like, "Leave me alone. I can't deal with this now. There's a contract. That's it." So these are the details. Now, so what payments do we have, and what is the argument that each one has? So, for the first, the Beit Din is going to split up the contract into three periods. and we'll explain why, because it depends. It's based on what she has already paid. So, for the first 2 months, September and October, she paid in full 3,000 shekels. For November, she only paid 970 shekels. And from then, she didn't pay anything. Okay? What is her reason? Her reasoning for not paying is that she was fired from her job. Why was she fired? Because she couldn't handle the crisis. She couldn't cope. She couldn't work. She was in stress. So she can't pay. She doesn't have any income right now, so she can't pay. The Balabait took the check and wanted the 9,000 shekel check of the bitachon and wanted to deposit it, but the bank didn't allow it, so he couldn't. Okay, these are the details. One more thing to have in mind is that even though she decided quite quickly after the beginning of the war that she's leaving the flat, she really only left the flat the 1st of January 2024. Okay, so she stopped paying a few days into, she stopped paying about a third into November, right? She paid 970 shekels for November instead of 3,000. And then she carried on being in the flat the rest of November, December, and then she left at the beginning of January. Okay, so let's get into the Ta'anot, and then we can get into the Mahalach of the Beit Din of the Dayanim. So, the Balabait has these arguments. He says, first of all, why should there be anything special about Ma'alot if the state didn't evacuate Ma'alot? Okay, there were rockets to the entire state. There were rockets in Tel Aviv. There were rockets in Yerushalayim. I don't see that as something unique. And the Socheret, the woman, she signed the contract understanding that there's no mamad. She knew there's no mamad. She accepted there's no mamad. She can't now come and make accusations. And he makes the argument that she was offered a key to the other flat, but she didn't want. It was her fault for not getting a key. Okay. Of course, he raises the regular arguments when it comes to rental agreements, that in the chozeh, in the agreement, it precisely says that she can't stop the chozeh in the middle, and that she can't bring any other tenants unless he agrees to them. He also explains why he didn't accept any of the tenants that she wanted to bring, and then he says, basically, she owes me rent for part of November till March 2024 of 14,000 shekels and 14,030 shekels, and she also didn't pay any of the municipal taxes, the water, the arnona, the electricity, balabait. She didn't pay any of those. She has to pay them also. Okay, so that's the balabait. What are her arguments? She is basically saying that because it was some kind of an honest. She was anusa. She was anusa because of the war, because of the sirens and the rockets. She was having hetkefei charada. She was having panic attacks, and she couldn't function. That's basically her argument. And she says she's blaming the balabait for not accepting other sochrim. Okay, beseder gamur. She does agree that the rent till the day she left, meaning the 1st of January, she does need to pay. She's just saying, I want to pay that B'ezrat Hashem when I get a job and I have a bit of an income. Okay, Ad kan, the details, and now we have to discuss a few questions. So before we get into the actual psak din, let's explain what do we need to discuss now halachically. Okay, so first of all, we have different periods of time throughout the contract. The first question that we need to ask is this a case of ones? Maybe it's a case even of makat medina, which we'll explain in a second what this is. And there's special halachot for a case of ones, special halachot for a case of makat medina. So what is the halacha about the payments that she has to make in the time of the ones and makat medina? Does this case count as an ones or a makat medina? In such a case, can she, the woman, bring in other people to rent? And the fact that the balabait already has the check for 9,000 shekels, does that have any halachic effect? Right? We know this. It could be he's now is he? Does this mean he's the muhzak? The psak din also goes into the chukei medina, but we're not going to get into that because that's none of our interest in this series. and then we need to basically put everything together and give a psak. Okay. So the first 3 months of the schirut, at the end, there's no way to go around it. At the end of the day, the woman lived in the flat, right? So she has to pay. The question that we have to ask is, how much does she have to pay? Okay, because halfway through there, from September till she actually left, she was living in the flat, using the flat. The question is, does she need to pay less or the same, depending on the situation of the war? The next 3 months, why is that important? The next 3 months, we said, hasn't paid, she wasn't living there, but he has rent in his hands. He has the check. Does that count as him being a muhzak? And then there is the last 3 months where she's not living there. She wants to cancel the agreement, and he doesn't have the money. Okay? So, let's do, as we say in Arabic, shwaya. Shwaya, let's get into the psak din now, and we can start discussing halacha, kmo shetzarich, which is what we are here to do. Says the Gemara in Masechet Rava Metzia, Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph. Amar ve'amar Rava. This is a list. In the Gemara, there's a list of halachot in the name of Rava, one of our main Amoraim, where he brings all kinds of halachot to do with po'alim, with someone who rents workers per the day, or per the week, whatever, but what rents workers. So says Rava, Hayman de Ogir Agorei Ledavla, meaning someone who has rented workers to water his field. And how would they water the field? Usually the fields would be by the river. There would be a stream or a river. There could be a big one, a smaller one. And what they would do is they would go with the buckets and bring the water from the stream or the river, or maybe a lake if there's a lake, and water the fields. Now, what happens is that they're in the middle of the day, in the middle of the day, the river, the stream has dried out, and they can't work, they can't water the field, they can't work, no job. Now the question is, does he have to pay them? They agreed at the beginning of the day, 20 zehuvim, well, that's a lot of money, but 20 zehuvim for the day, for a day of work. And they were going to work from Tzeit HaChama, Tzeit HaNeshama, right? And now in the middle of the day, there's no water. What happens? So the Gemara says like this, Rava says like this. Ilo avid de pasik, meaning if this is a nahar that usually the water's flowing all the time, and the fact that now the water's stopped is begeder, almost a nes. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that this stream stops. In this case, say that the po'alim, meaning it's bad luck for the workers. Let's put it that way. Yeah, bad luck, right? No, we could have known this. You couldn't have known that it's going to stop. Me, the balabait, I couldn't have known that the water's going to stop. So, ein alasot. You've worked, we agreed 20 zehuvim for the day. You worked 10 hours. You've worked 5 hours, which is 50%. You get 10 zehuvim. Okay. What happens if this nahar does tend to dry out sometimes? Every once in a while it dries out. So, yeah, and avi de pasik, if it occasionally does happen in the pasik that it dries out, that the water stops. So now it depends. It depends if the workers are locals or not. Ibnei mata, if they are locals, they're residents of the city, meaning they know that the stream sometimes stops and there's no water. So that also means that when they agreed to work today, they knew that this is something that could happen. So ibnei mata pseda de polim, meaning you took this job knowing that the stream here sometimes stops, but even though you agreed to it, so you get paid what you actually worked. But lav b'nei mata, if they are not residents of that city, pseida de balabai. This is I said of balabai because he knows that the water can stop. They don't. Okay, that's the Gemara Baba Metzia. Now, based on this Gemara, the Shulchan Aruch discussion in the Rishonim, but let's not get into that now. The Shulchan Aruch in Choshen Mishpat Shin Lamed Daled Seif Aleph, the first Seif of Simon Shin Lamed Daled says that we learn from here that a worker that can't work because of an oines, okay, Baal Habayit patur, meaning Baal Habayit doesn't need to pay them back. Says the Shulchan Aruch, הסוחר את הפועל להשקות השדה מזה הנהר, ופסק הנהר בחצי היום, אם אין דרכו להפסיק, פסיידא דפועל ואין בעל הבית נותן לו כלום. Meaning, בעל הבית doesn't have to pay him anything, of course, it's to pay for what the poalim actually did, but nothing more. Now the Rema, based on this Gemara, brings a halacha which actually is a machloket rishonim. The rishonim argue what is the case what is the halacha in the case of rent? Oh, we're getting back to our Psak Din, right? What is the halacha in the case of rent? And let's understand what the discussion is. Licheoira, we can say it's the same case. I want to rent a house. The Balabait is providing me with what I want, and I want to pay him. So I am like the Poel in the Gemara. I am like the Balabait in the Gemara. If I want to rent, right? So the tenant is like the Balabait in the Gemara. The Balabait, the owner of the flat, the Balabait is the Poel. So I come to the Poel and I say, give me this flat for the year. Right? Just like the Balabait says to the Poel, I want to rent your work for the day. And the Balabait says, no problem. Here's the price. Just like the Poel in the Gemara says, here's the price. And then comes an ones. And now the Poel can't work. So says the Shulchan Aruch, based on the Gemara, Balabait doesn't have to pay. So what does that mean when it comes to rent? Does that mean that if there's an ones, what happens? Does that mean the tenant doesn't have to pay? Oh, that's an interesting case. So that's a machloiket between the Mordechai and the Rashba. It's Rashba in Shut, in Tshuva, and the Mordechai. And the Beit Yosef paskins like the Rashba, and the Rema like the Mordechai. But let's explain what each one says. Says the Rema, Mi shesachar bait ladur bo, umet betoch zman haschirut. So, Reuven rented a flat from Shimon, and they rented it for a year. And then Reuven dies halfway through. Now Shimon's flat is standing empty, no one to pay. And now Shimon comes to the Yorshim, to the kids, to the sons, and says, guys, there's a contract. Your father has to pay me another half a year rent. Says the Rema, Ein tzach l'shalem lo rak ma shedar bo. The Balabait havi kepoel ve'havi lilat not. Meaning, Balabait is the poel, and there's an ones, and ones is Pseida. You've lost. Say that the poalim, right? Like the Gemara said, say that the poalim. Balabait is like the poel. Say that the poalim, and you've lost. So the Mordechai says, like poel in the Gemara, same with schirut. The Rashba says, no. The Rashba says that they have to pay everything. Okay? Miuyesh cholkim. This is Beit Yosef b'shem tshuvat Rashba. Why does the Rashba say not? Says the Rashba, schirut, rental, is like a kinyan. Meaning, if we have made a rental agreement for the year, there has been a kinyan made for the year. And the dira doesn't belong to the socher. The house doesn't belong to the tenant for the year. But there was a kinyan on the work, which is, in the Gemara, it was watering a field. Here in our case, it is me using the dira. There was a kinyan made for the year. And the fact that there was no on it, that there was on it, it don't mishaneh. With the poel, says the Rashba, every hour he pays he gets paid for what he did. But with schirut, there was a kinyan made for the entire year. So, as we said, the Beit Yosef paskins like the Rashba. So, in such a case, the tenant still has to pay everything till the end of the year, even if he's died, right? So, this is the case that they were discussing. The tenant died. And now the sons need to pay the rest of the rent. But the Rema says, no, it's a stam and a yesh. He wants to paskin like the Mordechai. But we're going back to the Rema. Because there's a cholkim, the Rashba, says the Rema like this. Lachen, im kibel hashachar kulo, ein tzach lachzir klum. Meaning, because there is a machloket, so it depends where the money is. If the money is already at the balabait, then he is the muchzak, and he doesn't have to give anything back. But if the tenant hasn't paid yet, then he doesn't have to pay. Basically, the Rema is applying the klal of hamotzi mechavero alav haraya. Okay, so now we've learned the halacha about oines. Good. There's another thing that we need to learn, which is makat medina. Makat medina, translated as a disaster, but a disaster which is a regional disaster. Okay, it affects a wide area of people, a wide area. Okay, a lot of people. There's a discussion in the Gemara, in the Bavli and in the Yerushalmi. In the Bavli, it's a machloket Ula and Rav Yuda or Rav Yosef. But there's a machloket between Ula and Rav Yuda or Rav Yosef about exactly how much does it have to affect really affect people. There's also a Rav Huna in the Yerushalmi. There's a Machloket Rishonim, but at the end of the day, everyone agrees that the Hagdara of Makat Medina is a disaster that affects, we couldn't see coming, and that affects a lot of people, and there was no way to defend ourselves from it. Okay, it's like a tsunami, an earthquake, and that kind of thing. So the question, let's see what the halacha says. So, of course, I didn't mention that the diyun, the source of Makat Medina is also in Baba Metzia. It's the Mishnah in Kuf Gimel Amud Bet, and there's a Ma'aser Rav in Kuf Vav Amud Bet also, which there defines that it's something that we couldn't have known is going to happen. Okay, so this is the Mekorot. If someone wants to look inside. We're moving on to the Shulchan Aruch in Chosh and Mishpat. Again, this time is Siman Shin Kaf Aleph Sif Aleph. So before about honest was Shin Amid Aleph Sif Aleph. Now Makat Medina is Shin Kaf Aleph Sif Aleph. Says the Shulchan Aruch. HaChocher hu HaMekabel Sedeh Mechavero. There's all kinds of halachot here, okay? And then he says, Ve'im Makat Medina hi kegon sheyavash hanahar menakelo mechachiro. Meaning, I've rented a field, or in our case, she's rented the house for the year, and then there's a Makat Medina. So the socher, the tenant pays less, pays only what they've used and not the rest. Okay, and this Shulchan Aruch repeats this halacha again a second time. If the first time was Shin Kaf Aleph, this is Shin Kaf Bet again. In Sif Aleph. החוכר או הסוחר שדה מחברו, והחלך אגב או נשדפה. So, אם יראה דבר זה לרוב השדות של יותר, so okay, someone's rented the field, and then the entire field went dry. There's no yavul, no produce from this sadeh. So, if יראה דבר זה לרוב השדות של אותה עיר, if there's something that happened to most of the fields of that place, of that town, מנקלו מחכירו הכל, לפי ההפסד שירו. So, you pay less based on how much you were affected by the Makat Medina. ואם לא פשטה המכה ברוב השדות, if it didn't affect most of the sadot, most of the fields, then whatever, there's different halachos, because then it's not defined as a Makat Medina. We're not going to get into that. But we can see that when it is a Makat Medina, the halacha is that the Baal Habayit loses. Okay? Because this is not an honest. In an honest, it's a hefsed of the Poalim. In a Makat Medina, basically it's a hefsed to Baal Habayit. The Rema brings an interesting addition. This time in Chosh and Mishpat Siman Shin Yud Bet in Sif Yud Zayin, he brings again, this is Ilchot Schirut. What happens if the house burnt down? Someone rents a house and the house burns down. So there's different halachot and different cases. How many houses? Which part of the house burned down? Then he says Nisraf Kol Ha'ir. Okay, the entire city was burnt down. Have Makat Medina. Okay, so this is important. Meaning, if it's a Makat Medina, says the Rema, even if the Baal Habayit is muchzak with the money, he still has to pay it back. Okay, understand? Okay, do you understand what we just said? Let's take that back to our case. The woman paid, let's say she paid for the entire year. She paid 3,000 shekels per month, kaful 12, which is 36,000 shekels for the year. She's paid in advance. Now came a Makat Medina. We need to decide if what is happening, if the war is Makat Medina. But if we were to decide it's a Makat Medina, he has to pay her back for all the months that she doesn't live in the flat. Okay? So, let's summarize the halacha that we've seen now. In a case of honest, there is a Machloket Shulchan Aruch Rema. According to the Shulchan Aruch, rent, with the halacha of honest and the poalim is not kashur. With rent, it's a kinyan, and you have to pay everything, even in a case of honest. According to the Rema, in a case of rent, in a case of rent and is honest, basically we go according with the muchzak keeps the money. Okay, yafe. In a case of Makat Medina, it's quite clear according to the Shulchan Aruch twice that the hefsed is on Baal Habayit. And the Rema adds, and this is probably accepted also too by the Shulchan Aruch, that this is even if the Baal Habayit is muchzak, he has to give the money back. Okay, now this discussion, of course, is all brought in the Psak Din. I've just said it in my words. If anyone wants, I put the Psak Din in a link in the description, and you can read it inside. Then now the Psak Din goes to the next stage, which is to discuss. Is this Metzias an honest, or is it a Makat Medina? So, about it being a Makat Medina. Says the Beth Din, we have tzdadim lechan ulechan. We have reasons to say it is and reasons to say it isn't. So, mitzad echad, on the one hand, Ma'alot, the city of Ma'alot, wasn't evacuated. That's number one. When the Beth Din checked how many sirens were there actually in Ma'alot, it was quite low. Number two. 3, the woman was given a pitaron. There was a solution, which is the mamad in the next flat, and according to the Baal Habayit, she was offered a key. So we said that one of the things to do with Makat Medina is that you couldn't see it coming, and you couldn't find a solution. Well, she was offered a solution. And number 4, the fact, and this is a people by the Dayanim, the fact that the woman brought other people who were prepared to take the flat proves that the flat was Ra'ui Lemigurim. Meaning, the woman is arguing that because it was a Makat Medina, the flat is not Ra'ui Lemigurim because there's no mamad. But you were testifying that there were other people who were prepared to come and rent the flat, and you wanted them to come and take it so that you can get rid of the agreement of the Choseh. That proves that the Bait is Ra'ui Lemigurim. So these are 4 reasons why the Beit Din says this case is not a Makat Medina. On the other hand, the Beit Din has made some kind of checks. It doesn't say here what kind of checks, but they understood that the majority or the vast majority of people in Ma'alot have a mamad or some kind of a miklat. So the fact that this flat doesn't have is weird. Reason number 1. Reason number 2 is that out of those people in Ma'alot that don't have a mamad or a miklat, a big chunk of them left. And Nachon that the Medina didn't evacuate Ma'alot. And maybe the reason it didn't evacuate Ma'alot is because in Ma'alot everyone has a mamad. But the fact is that most people in Ma'alot who don't have a mamad left. So these reasons could teach us that this maybe is a Makat Medina. So the Dayanim say that basically what happens here is we have a suffix. Okay? Is this a Makat Medina or not? Suffix. We can't have a Hachra'ah, and we leave it like that. So Makat Medina is off the table. What about honest? Is this a case of honest? So we saw before the Machlokeh, the Shulchan Aruch and the Rema. So according to the Shulchan Aruch, even if we do call this an honest, it doesn't matter, right? According to the Rema, this is a case of an honest because the Rema is debating between the Mordechai and the Rashba. He says, so in our case, the 9,000 shekels that he already has in a check for the 3 months of rent, he can use, and the next few months, no, right? But there's another people which we can get into, and this people is about is this a case of honest? So if we go back to the original discussion in the Rema, the mikra that we brought was when Reuven rented the flat for a year and then died halfway through. Maybe death isn't the good example for our case. So when the Rema, as we mentioned, the Rema in Shin Lamed Daled Seif Aleph, which is where the Rema brings that machloket. There in the Achronim, there is a discussion. A book called Pitchei Choshen brings a few Achronim, Minchat Pitim, and a few others that say, wait. First of all, the Mordechai is the Yachid who choleks on the Rashba, even though it isn't Meduyak, it isn't in the Psak Din here, but if you learn the Sugya inside, there's another few Rishonei Ashkenaz. There is a Maharam which probably agrees with the Mordechai, but the rabbi of the Mordechai, so the Mordechai agrees with the Maharam, but let's leave that aside. These Achronim argue that they basically saying this opinion that the Rema is basing himself on is מאוד chalash, and in the Darkei Moshe himself he brings the author against this Mordechai. But he says, even if we want to miyashev the Mordechai, okay, they say these Achronim, and this is also the Aruch HaShulchan in Siman Shin Lamed Aleph Seif Yud Bet. They say no, davka b'mavet. Only when in case of death did the Mordechai say that the Baal Habayit has to pay back. But in any other case of honest, no, mapitom schirut is a kinyan like the Rashba. Now let's read this from the words of the Minchat Pitim. ולולי דמסתפינא נראה שאף לדעת המרדכי אינו נפטר בשער אונסין. זה דווקא כשמת הסוחר ונתבטל שיעבודו. Meaning, when when the reason the Mordechai said what he said is because in schirut is kinyan. Reuven rented the flat for a year. Reuven is mishuabad to the flat. But what happens when there's no Reuven? Reuven died, there's no more Reuven. So the shiabud is gone. Says the Minchat Pitim, Ein shiabud over el yorshim. So the sons, they don't get the shiabud. But if there is a different case of an honest, like the war, Reuven is still here. The shiabud is still applying to Reuven. Says the Minchat Pitim, says the Aruch HaShulchan, in such a case, also the Rema, also the Mordechai would agree with the Rashba that the tenant has to pay in full. But there is actually, this isn't brought in the Psak Din, but the Avnei Nezer in Choshen Mishpat Siman Kafei says no, the Mordechai is muchlat, and also in other cases of honest. Whatever, the Psak Din here goes into this Machloket Achronim and says, we're not sure even, it's a suffix if this case is counted as an honest. Okay, so, is it a Makat Medina? Suffix. Is it an honest? Very, very hard to say it's an honest, so it's a suffix also. What about, basically there was another argument made by the woman, which is that the Baal Habayit is not okay for not accepting other Sochrim. She brought other people, and he didn't accept them. So, these halachot are brought on in Siman Shin Yud Bet in Choshen Mishpat, and in Sif Zayin, the Shulchan Aruch and the Rema agree that the socher has the upper hand, the tenant, okay, has the upper hand when he brings new people into rent, and the Baal Habayit has to accept them, but there is a t'nai. These people have to be Adam Hagun. Okay? Let's read the Shulchan Aruch. This is again, as I said, Choshen Mishpat Siman Shin Yud Bet, Sif Zayin. Meaning the owner has to give note to the tenant about if he's cancelling the agreement. 30 days בעיירות, ומקודם 12 חודשים בכרכים, that's how long you have to give notice, כדי שיבקש שכן ולהישאר ביתו פנוי. Okay? ואם לא הודיעו, אינו יכול לצאת אלא ייתן השכר. If there was no notice given, you can't just get up and leave, you have to pay the rent. Says the Rema, or the person renting brings someone else to rent. Okay? Adds another line, again in the name of the Bet Yosef. Again, the Bet Yosef agrees to this. Okay, so, as we said, it has to be a decent person. What is a decent person? We'll leave that per case, to discuss per case, because the Dayanim here say, wait a second. In the agreement, in the Choseh, there is a line that says that the socheret does not have any schut to bring in other tenants without the Baal Habayit agreeing. So say the Dayanim, it seems that the socheret has said, I don't want my ability. I have an halachic ability to bring in other people. I don't want it. I don't need it. I am mevatering on that. But they say, so that is correct. But Baal Habayit, understanding what's happening in Medinat Israel, in Eretz Israel, the war, the tension, the tzara, he should have been mukhan to accept the other people that have come. Even though they're coming for a short period of time, not as long as he wanted, whatever, blah, 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 whatever reason can be, he should have accepted them. And he was not okay for not accepting Adam Sheino Agun, even though according to the agreement and according to Halacha, basically she came and said, she said, I don't want that benefit. I have an halachic benefit and the ability to bring in other people. I don't want that. He should have allowed them to come into the flat and bring other tenants. We did say that there's another. We asked at the beginning: is it significant that he has the check? And I've mentioned a few times throughout the Psak Din that it is. But let's just explain now. Let's give it a minute or two to explain why. So we mentioned at the beginning that the Rema said in a case of an honest, because he doesn't know how to pass between the Mordechai and the Rashba. So we go according to the famous klal of Amotzim Mechavero Alav Haraya. So whoever's holding onto the money, the other side is obligated to bring proof. Yeah, I have the money. I don't need to do anything. You want the money back? You have to prove that the money belongs to you. So what is happening right now? So let's go back to our case. So the Baal Habayit has a check a check for rent for 9,000 shekels, which is equivalent to 3 months of rent. So there isn't a long machloket between the no mamash machloket, different ways to halachically to determine halachically what the status of a check is, but it's mikubal on kimat all the poskim that the check is it's a method of payment which doesn't need any more discussion or proof. Meaning it's like a shtar Beth Din in some way, but not mamash. So I'm using that as a dugma. Okay, it's as if the money has already been transferred. Okay, so even though I'm holding onto the piece of paper, the check, and I need to go to the bank and deposit, and the bank will transfer the money, and maybe I'll only see it the next day or 2 days later. If I'm holding onto a check, it's as if this is money that I already hold on to, and it's not debatable. Okay, so that is also important to pay attention to. So at the end of all this discussion, the Dayanim need to make a decision. So what are we going to do? We're going to split up the tkufa of the year into different decisions. For the first 3 months, the woman still lived in the flat. Say the Dayanim, because it's a suffix, she has to pay. Because she lived in the flat, she has to pay. Makat Medina, not Makat Medina, Oynes, not Oynes. She was living in the flat. She only left on the 1st of January. So she has to pay. Okay, Metsuyan. So she has to pay. And so because she has to pay 9,000 shekels, and she's only paid 3,970, right? She paid 3,000 and then 970. So she still has to pay another 5,030 shekels. Okay, Metsuyan. The next 3 months, January, February, March, she did not live in the flat, and it's important to know that this psak din is being given now at the end of March. Okay, so the Dayanim say the 3 months till now that she hasn't been living there. It's hard for us to say that it's an honest or makat medina, so she has to pay 9,000, right? And the reason she has to pay the 9,000 is because he has the check. So she has to pay the 9,000. He is muhza. There's an argument, does she need to pay the 9,000? He's muhzak with the check, so he keeps the check and he can deposit it, and she has to make sure that he can get them the funds, get the 9,000. From the 1st of April, which is this discussion, as I said, is on 31st of March 2024, this psak din, the Dayanim force a pshara. They force a settlement. Okay? And they say, even though the halacha is quite clear, the halacha is quite clear because there is a suffix in the definition of the halacha, because of the situation, because of the war, because we do think the Baal Habayit should have been a bit more gamish, a bit more acceptable, accepting, to the people that were coming to rent the flat. They are forcing a pshara, forcing a compromise. What is the compromise? They're saying, we are canceling the agreement. Okay. From now on, the owner, the Baal Habayit, it's his obligation, together with help from the woman, to find new sochrim. She doesn't have to pay him any rent, and he has to pay municipal taxes. So for the first 6 months, she has to pay the rent and the municipal taxes, and from now on, he has to pay them from going on forwards. And they say, this is mitzad ve'asita yashar ve'atov, and that's how they end the psak din. The psak din, the discussion was given, the psak din was based on a diyun in the Beit Din on the 31st of March. It did take another few weeks until the psak din was given. It was given on the 30th of May. It was given on Kaf Bet Be'iyar, but this was the hachlata given. Rav Eliyahu Blum Shlita was the Av Beit Din. And what did we learn today in this psak din? So we've learned, first of all, it was very interesting because it's relevant to the metzias that is evolving around us in the last 2.5 years. And we can see how the war is affecting, we know how the war is affecting the state, the chayalim, the miluim, the money, the finances of the state. But this is also another interesting aspect of how the war is affecting individuals. We've learned in this shiur the term of makat medina, the term of ones b'poalim, the term of someone who's muhzak, having a check as being muhzak. And we've seen how the Dayanim here in this case have also managed to take a complex and maybe even a sensitive case which has a lot of sfekot be'halacha, and also find the way to get a compromise out of it in a way where all sides left the diyun accepting. והאמת והשלום, אהבו ועשית ישר והטוב. I hope you enjoyed this psak din, this shiur. If you have any ideas or bakashot for specific piskei din, or even cases that you know were discussed in tshuvot you want us to go over, let me know either in the description or reach out, and call Tuv for now.